We'll call this meeting to order, and we're going to begin tonight with a presentation on the trail race by Mr. Darren Miller.
Evening, Council.
Evening.
How's everybody doing?
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm excited to be here tonight. This has been something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. As a long-distance runner for many, many years, marathons, ultra-distance, 100-mile races, I want to bring that back to the town where I grew up. My family's lived in this community since 1987. I went to Franklin, 2001. Penn State, 05. Recently moved back from the West Coast after a few years. So the Westmoreland Heritage Trail was always a place where I trained. I loved it there. Duff Park, Pleasant Valley Park, West Penn Trail, all the way out to Blairsville and back. And that's what I'm proposing. So just looking for guidance. However we need to do this. Three Rivers Marathon Swim is something I've done as a charity through the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh since 2009. Some of you might know my backstory. As a long-distance swimmer, we raised about $250,000 for the kids at the hospital. And this race will be 100%. Anything we earn will go back to the different organizations that will be represented. So the Parks, Heritage Trail, West Penn Trail. I've been to a few of the Westmoreland Heritage Trail meetings. They're all pretty excited about it. So I'll just get right in. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to field them. And as I mentioned, whatever I need to do for any permits or whatever that looks like, please help me out. Okay. So I just put together a quick all the different trail maps that I found online. If you wanted to, the first page, if you're looking at the map right there, right in downtown Export, I think a great place to start would be right behind the mural, that beautiful mural that was painted down there. I think that'd be a great place. And a lot of the runs that I've done across the country and around the world, it's always, what can you bring to the people that are coming into that community? So the race that I do in Pittsburgh, you know, we had people coming in from Ukraine this year. It was really awesome. So it's something that I really love to have people come in. And this is a race that we can draw people from not only domestically, but also international. So just a great way to promote this community in this area. So the first page, it's going to start right where it says Export, right behind Joey's, right behind the Export Floral, back in that back area, back parking lot. And we'll basically start heading east. The trail, obviously, the big challenge of all of this is going to be that 3.9 miles that we're still working on. There's been some great news with the Westmoreland Heritage Trail. I think about 3 more miles they've been able to get going for next year at this time. So from there, we'd head all the way out to the Delmont Trailhead, and from there, the 8 or so miles all the way out to Salzburg. If you flip the map to page 2, this is going to be the West Penn Trail. We'll take the spur to the north, heading up toward the Kiskiminikis, come back, and then we would take the West Penn Trail all the way out to the Conemaugh Dam, and then follow that, the West Penn Trail, all the way out to the Newport Road, out going north of Blairsville. Come all the way back. Again, the Westmoreland Heritage Trail, if we do a double of that, it's 44 miles. If we double the West Penn Trail, it's about 32 miles. And as we come back into Export and we head out toward Trafford, on the first page again, and then basically we would go up into Duff, do about 5 or 6 miles in Duff. We would take the corridor over to Pleasant Valley Park, do another 5 or 6 over there, and then come back. And then head back out to, go to Trafford, then come back, and then go back up into Duff and Pleasant Valley again, do that loop, and then finish back in Export. Right now, it's roughly right around 100 miles. I've done 7 of these races in my life. They're a lot of fun. They're great for the community. A lot of it's comprised of, you'll have aid stations. Runners will basically be supported on their own. You'll have an aid station roughly every 6 to 8 miles or so. And that would be, you know, along the route, there's a lot of great pavilions and areas where people can park. It's a very accessible route, which is very exciting. Unlike some of the trails I've done where you're out in the middle of nowhere for, 30, 40, 50 miles, and that gets a little bit dangerous. So luckily, I'm sure many of you are well aware of the route that I've proposed. And the access for emergency vehicles and such is very, very important. It's number one, obviously, for that reason. But the aid stations are how the runners get nutrition. They'll pull over, fill up their water bottles, fill up their packs, whatever they have, food, drinks, all that, and keep going. So it's a nonstop fashion. It's going to be about, like I said, 60 or so miles of it, 70 miles of it. It's going to be fairly flat. So it'll be, by most accounts, an easier race. I know it's 100 miles, so that sounds funny to some of you, me saying that. But I would say most people would bring this in under 20 hours, but we probably have the cutoff right around 30 hours. Pretty standard for a race of this distance. What time of day, I'm not sure exactly, again, logistics of when we would start. But obviously, if there's anything I need to do as far as, again, permitting with the police for not doing really any road crossings other than what the trail already goes over. And as far as any facilities, again, to be determined. But for the most part, I think we're pretty good with what Duff has. They have obviously a great pavilion there. Pleasant Valley has the parking lot, which is great. We could set up a tent there. Any questions?
Darren, lighting, if it's, you mentioned 20 to 30 hours.
Correct.
So do you wear a light on your head?
Yes, you'd have a headlamp.
Headlight.
Yep. Yeah, so anytime at night, runners would have headlamp, pack. And again, any stipulations can be put on them as far as what they have to carry, if there's any certain medical supplies that we would require of them. But again, a race like this that's well accessible, I don't see that being an issue. So again, to run at night, I know that obviously Westmoreland Heritage Trail, Duff, Pleasant Valley, a lot of those are closed after sunset. So that would be obviously part of this that they would be running at night.
Well, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the community and to bring attention and business. My only concern is particularly with PV Road. We already have so many complaints about PV Road, kind of for staff, kind of for you, suggestions for helping to manage the crossings there, especially since it might be spread across.
Talk about the corridor where you cross over Pleasant Valley, yeah.
Yep.
And that would be something that, again, trying to figure out the best way, for safety reason. How many runners would we have the first year? And just to let you know, we're at least a year out, obviously. Year and a half. So planning this type of a race is obviously a process. Got a lot of people well ready to volunteer and very excited about it, which is great. But I would say you are correct, Jamie. That would be the one area, I think, of the entire race where we would have, and then, of course, 66, figuring out how we're, getting over that and stuff. So, but we have some gentlemen from the Westmoreland Heritage Trail. We have some gentlemen from the Westmoreland Heritage Trail that basically said that they would be able to cut a rough cut area of actually where the trail is supposed to go of that 3.9 miles, which would be really exciting. So again, I know there's some logistics with that. We're still working on that. But by the time this race happens, whether the actual trail would be in by that point or not, we would be able to, run through that rough cut area and hopefully be able to get all the property owners along those lines. So, yes.
Darren, if like some of the younger, older population that isn't long distance runner for 100 miles, is there going to be certain divisions of this where they could do a partial of it if they wanted to participate in the event?
Sure. Well, Mac, I expect you to be there running the whole 100. So.
I mean, I'll probably do it.
No, there's still a lot of people ask, could we do like a 50K option or a 20, a marathon distance or a 10, even a 5K, right? A 10K. And that's definitely something we can do. I mean, as we're well aware, along the trails, there's plenty of nice spaces to do something like that. And I could see that being in the future. It's just the more distances you have, the more logistics are involved. That's all. Yeah. But I could definitely see having a fun run or getting the kids involved for sure. Right. To be able to, and I would think during like the Duff area or even having different parts along the trail, I think would be kind of cool. Yeah. But just getting people involved, and it's amazing. I mean, even as a runner myself, so many of these trails, it's almost like I didn't even know about until not too long ago, like the West Penn Trail. I don't think I ever ran on that until like a year or two ago. It was just crazy. But there's so many beautiful areas, and I just want to bring people to our community and promote it.
How many participants do you think this would attract?
These races unless you're in this community, some of these races attract thousands of people. Now, how many runners would be at a race like this? I mean, it could be anywhere from, I'd say your first year, you could probably get between 50 and 100, I'm guessing. And then you could take it up to a certain level, right? So a lot of races, they have 200, 300, 400, they have a cap. Well, I don't want to get overzealous and think we're going to have 1,000 people. I don't want that. My race I have in the rivers, I have capped it at 12 swimmers. That's it, right? Just for safety reasons. This is not to make an exorbitant amount of money. It's to bring people here, but it's number one is safety. And that's something that I'm very, very adamant about. So, I mean, we could cap it early at probably a couple hundred, and I wouldn't see why we couldn't get that.
You mentioned the money aspect of it. Is there typical, what would a typical fee be for a runner?
Sure. I mean, most of these races would go for $200-300 a pop, no problem. I kind of like the idea of you know, like 15632, $156.32 or something like that for export. Coming up with little ideas like that. But at the end of the day, yeah, the money would come from the runner. And I mean, I would say, again, $200-300 wouldn't be out of the wheelhouse for something like this.
Do the runners wear advertisements or?
They can wear whatever they want. A lot of them could be sponsored, could want to promote causes, whatever that looks like to them, you know. But again, like stipulations, for example, they could have reflective gear as a you know, hey, we have to do this in certain areas, something like that. So it's wide open to what they would have to wear. But again, for the most part, they'll come dressed as however they want to get dressed. So, and I would want to do it. I mean, I think the fall, I think this last couple of weeks, we can all agree, has absolutely been stunning around here. So I think this would be a great time of year, you know, before the leaves fall to do this kind of race.
Do you have a model that you're following for this, or is there somebody else that's helping with the procedural part for safety and everything?
I mean, just an experience I've had, you know, working with the emergency vehicles, working with the Pittsburgh Police, the River Rescue, working with all of them for the swimming race that I've done for 10 years. But with this, it's just getting all the different EMS units involved. I mean, I've done a lot out in Derry and out near Keystone Lake where I used to practice at. So those kind of folks would have no problem being there, showing up, you know. And we want to have emergency vehicles on tow. I mean, you know, runners could wear spot trackers. You can literally tell exactly where every runner is. They could be required to wear GPS. They could, you know, there's all kind of ways to keep track of people. I think on the trail is nice where the bikes are allowed. We'd have safety vehicles, people, you know, with the hats, with the lights, like riding bikes on the trail, keeping track of people, even at night, especially at night. That's the big key.
Will there be prize money? And how do you determine?
There's not really. I mean, and what we do is not really prize money. I don't believe in that. You know, any things I've done, and we've never got a nickel from it. So, I think you'd have a neat trophy. And
You
when
have
we do
trophies?
We do like belt buckles for 100 milers. That's kind of the stereotypical thing people do. So I would want to get a local blacksmith, you know, to forge something. Or my award for the Three Rivers Marathon swim is a railroad spike, you know, and I just literally painted it 3RMS, and that's simple. You know, people use it as a paperweight. It doesn't cost us anything, you know. So it doesn't have to be anything flashy. That's not something we need to spend money on. I'd rather take as much money as we can, give it back to the trail. So.
Okay, very cool. Awesome. Is there anything we need to do, Mike, or?
We can certainly, you know, follow up. Safety being the biggest factor, we'll need to follow up with emergency services and see what some of their thoughts are. But I don't know, you know, because it includes other municipalities, maybe, you know, some cooperation level that we'll have to gather with other municipalities, but nothing that stands out right now that we would need to do. But
Okay.
we certainly have some time to plan for it.
No, I mean, it just sounds like an awesome thing, so anything we can do to help.
Sure, appreciate it.
I think too, at night they're closed, the trail's closed anyway, so I think you wouldn't have bikers and stuff that you would run into during the day, so I think.
Again, it's not like, I don't want you guys to think of it like the marathon or like the, it's not like you're going to have like, again, like thousands of runners running, or you're going to completely congest the trails and there's going to be people parking everywhere and it's going to be crazy. You know, it's not going to be like that. Most of these races, again, because people start to spread out after you run for that amount of time. So some people might be coming in at 15, 16 hours, right? And other people might be coming in at 30, right? So you're going to have they're going to be spread out. You know, so again, the congestion as far as bothering the public in any way, I don't think you're going to have any issue with that.
Darren, do you see when the race is being run, is it closed just to the runners typically, or?
No, the trail, I would not want to close the trail or anything like that. In the parks, I would want to keep all that open. I don't think that would be an issue at all. And again, we can do it at a time where we could have Duff Park. We can have the run. Sorry. The runners could run through the parks at night even. You know, we could time it that way. You know, so like nobody would be bothered at all, especially on some of those single back trails. You know, there's not a lot of traffic up on some of the trails in Duff. Most of it's on like the bikeway. So I think we should be good there.
Okay.
What's
And
the
as far
date
as like
date on this again?
what's up?
The date?
It would probably be at least a year. We're at least a year out. I'm guessing it possibly could be two. I mean, again, there's no rush with this. I want to take my time, do it right. And again, to your point, emergency I have no problem talking to all the guys here and get that going. So with the cooperation of all the different, you know, like you said, different boroughs, municipalities, I think we should be fine with that.
Okay, awesome. Oh, you have another question?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I could have a follow-up. I mean, again, 6 months, you know, not maybe the spring or something and see kind of where we're at. If you want like an emergency plan, I could come up with that 100%, and that way I can present that as well. So however you guys want to handle it, it's fine with me.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thanks for presenting. That's
Yeah, thanks
awesome.
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Very
it.
good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. There you go, Jason. There's your
That brings us to our next public hearing, which is a public hearing for amendments to the 2022 operating budget.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Okay, the operating budget amendments proposed were a change to reflect, bear with me 1 second. Pulled out the wrong documents. Sorry about that. The proposed amendments equate to $110,000. These primarily were due to inflation factors that hit the municipality within 2022. So should I go through line by line, or?
I think just a brief overview is probably okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, I mean, the largest increases that we saw in the municipality were primarily around utility, gas usage, things that everybody kind of saw happening at home or at the pump. We also had some things dealing with aggregates like salt or stone, things along that line. Our utility costs went up significantly in 2022. We saw a rise in natural gas prices from the 2021 rate of $3.59 per MCF to $9.18 per MCF in 2022. And kilowatts for our energy went from 0.05 kilowatts to 0.10, which is twice as much money. Overall, there was, I believe, a 43% increase across the board. So amendments were needed throughout different departments in areas just to adjust those. Gas went up about 33% this year, huge spikes. From January of 22 to July of 22, we saw 78%, which was $2.88 per gallon in January to $4.23 per gallon later in the year. Fortunately, the forward thinking of council and my predecessors and approaching taxes for the current year really helped offset a lot of the inflation factors that we ran into this year. We also were able to bring in a little bit more revenues on prior earned income taxes and building and inspection permit fees. So we were able to balance out the increased expenses with our increased revenues. Capital plan was also encompassing certain amendments, and things along that line included postponing the Meadowbrook slide. We had another slide that came through this year, and we pushed off the Meadowbrook and kind of handled the Saddleback. We had MS4 basin retrofits. In Plum, there was a specific basin that was landing on our property that had...
Tracy, could you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Yes, of course. So we had originally budgeted $40,000 for basin retrofits, but one of the basins that was located near Plum that was on our line was flagged for improvements that needed to be done. So we need to increase the the basin expense line to $75,000 instead of $40,000. And our overlay program also experienced spikes in the asphalt price index. So we had to adjust that along the line as well. Revenues were increased in our real estate transfer tax. We brought in a lot more. Thank you again for approaching that revenue source for the transfer tax, because that helped offset a lot of these increased expenses. Aside from that, we had 2 license plate readers that needed to be amended, and those were budgeted from revenues that were received from Westmoreland County grants and proceeds from the sale of a vehicle. And also, we needed to replace a code enforcement vehicle that the repairs were just not worth repairing when the costs were so high. The replacement was, a better option for when comparing the cost of repairs versus replacing the vehicle. I think that's pretty much the overview for the amendments that are coming through on both the general and the capital side. Are there any questions?
22 budget that we had done, and when we had made the decision to shift in taxis a bit, I think that Diane had included in her projections the increase in the real estate transfer tax and the earned income tax. But it looks like we're actually seeing more of an increase from the earned income tax than we had projected.
Yes. So, well, we budgeted it conservatively. We didn't know how fast it was going to transfer over, if things would come in the delinquent side. So we went on the conservative side for real estate, for earned income. Now, I do have to say that there is a little bit more of a bump when you're looking at year-end versus next year, and that was primarily due to the first quarter of 2022 was actually based off of Q4 of 2021 collections. So the whole first quarter was reflecting a 0.5, whereas the last 3 will be reflecting a 0.7. So when you're looking at the overall budgets or the amendments or whatever document you're looking at, you'll see a 5% increase, but in reality, that's because we're going to have a full year at the 0.7 rate.
So did you say you said we postponed the Meadowbrook slide?
Yes.
Okay. And how are you projecting if inflation keeps increasing? If we're already delving into that increased EIT, how are we going to hold up financially in the future?
Well, one thing I have to say about the EIT is as earned income goes up or cost of living goes up, that naturally reflects on the earned income taxes that are received. So as wages go up, because wages typically fall in line with cost of living, that does help naturally increase the revenue side. So you would hope that it would help offset some of those increased expenses. Now, it is hard to accurately predict what expenses are going to be. I mean, we've seen record highs this year. You can't make an assumption that it's going to be as drastic or, whatever it is. So my approach for 22 had a lot to do with what we saw the costs were for this year and estimating an increase that is at least, if not more, than what we typically see year over year. So I kind of made my adjustments based off of the inflation that's taking place this year and kind of reflected that moving forward. I mean, you'd never really want to overestimate and have a premature jump on things when it might not necessarily need to be. But there was more based on quotes or asphalt index or stone or things along that line that we did adjust for from the current situation.
JC, what you mentioned taking the current, if you will, or 22 for 23 and inflation. What percentage did you put? Were you 8% or?
For what specifically? Because each one kind of had a different scenario. Are you talking about revenue or expense side?
I was talking about the expense side.
Okay, so when it came to gasoline, we saw a 33% increase this year. We can assume because of everything going on with, the Ukraine and Russia and them being a major export of the gasoline charges that it's probably not going to go down. It probably will inflate. But I don't want to jump the gun and say it's going to inflate equivalent to what it has this year. So when it came to gasoline, I did about a 16% increase from year end, which is around about between gas and diesel about 34 cents per gallon when I did my calculations. Now, when it came to things like utilities, we typically would see anywhere from, I want to say, a 6 to 8% increase on utilities dependent on what one we were looking at. So I took what our projections were based on our situation for this year, the end of year, and I kind of applied that same concept just on the higher end. So whether it be an 8%, just to kind of give a little bit of an extra cushion and to see where that would fall with our revenues to make sure that we would have a balanced budget.
Just as I think doing what you're doing, it makes all the sense in the world, but coming up with the percentages, do you have a crystal ball?
I don't, but
my way.
what we do have is history. So if we're able to look back on history and look year over year, and I have probably 15 to 20 years of history for each expense line to see what those average increases are. I mean, we can make assumptions. And there's certain things that I did, if you would look in the budget, where I looked at inflation rate, past I think 10 years I did, and then I did a forward calculation in Excel to be able to see what the trend line was. And I applied that to where we are currently to see where I might need to be looking for the future based on, the past and where we're at. So I tried to take the best educated guess that I could based on history and where we're at.
JC, on page 38, and I think throughout a couple of the places, it looks to me, maybe I'm reading wrong, like we're
38 of the budget?
You have section 2.
That's
Section 2, okay.
3.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. It looks like we're
yeah,
still
I-
budgeting in the amphitheater. So
We,
the question is.
I
if that's
think
on-
we're mixed. Right now, we're on amendments, and I think we're starting to get into
too far?
budget
All right.
items. I don't know if we want to keep those separate just for the
Yeah,
record.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah, so any questions or concerns about the amendments? That's the first public hearing. Okay, then we'll just close the public hearing for the amendments, and now we'll start the public hearing for the 2023 operating budget. So before we get into questions, Mike, JC, do you want to give a presentation, just kind of general overview where we're at?
I do have a presentation. Do you have the slide?
I should. Okay.
Oh, that's
Is that
very
too
small.
I'm
That's
trying to
very
fit it all
small.
in there.
If you want to skew in on the revenue side, I'm going to talk about revenues at first, and then we can kind of move down as needed.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, first I would like to start off by saying that the proposed 2023 budget is a balanced budget and there are no proposed tax increases. The total budget for the 2023 year is approximately $15,408,743, excluding interfund transfers. The general fund is expecting $9,973,845 worth of expenses. The capital projects are equating to $3,832,500, and debt service payment for the 2023 year is remaining at $417,000. The value of a mill for 2022 is currently estimated to be coming in at $334,000. The final value of a mill in 2021 was 0.4% higher than what was expected. We estimated it to be $331,000, and it came in at about $332,000, which totaled a collection increase of $17,395 more than what was anticipated. The 2023 value is estimated to be $337,000, which is less than 1% more than 2022 as an increase. In 2021, American Rescue Funds became available. Those funds were sent in 2 tranches. One was in 2021 and the other in 2022. When the final ruling was released in 2022, it was the very beginning, we were able to go back and set up a receivable to offset the police expenses that took place in 2021. We received those funds in 2022, and the 2023 budget proposes moving that fund balance of $1.808 million over to the capital plan to support the predetermined projects. The budget also includes additional real estate transfer tax in the amount of $633,600, which will be used to fund capital projects, specifically road improvements. Dedicated millage is allocated out the same as 2022 and is proposed to be 5 mills to the general fund, 3.2 mills to the capital reserve, 1.3 to debt service, 1.35 to emergency equipment, 1 mill to the Murraysville Library to fund their 72% of their general operations, 0.2 to Medic One to help fund their new funding towards a new ambulance, and 0.1 to the hydrants for quarterly hydrant maintenance costs. The decision on the division of revenues was made based on the certainty of the revenue source and the flexibility of the annual expenses. Earned income tax has become a more steady source of revenue and remains as the primary funding in the general fund. Real estate transfer tax was moved to capital in 2022, because if it fluctuated, we had the capability of postponing or adjusting projects with more ease in the capital plan. Real estate taxes are stagnant and will provide the main funding for costs for those in a more consistent nature, such as the debt hydrant and Medic One. And real estate is also funding emergency equipment purchases and the library, both of which can be adjusted if ever needed to be. If you would turn to section 1 of your budget, we can start going over some comparisons between 23 and 22. The total revenues expected, total revenues and expenditures, are proposed to increase 4.52% over 2022's. The 2023 budget includes earned income tax of 0.7, which are estimated to generate $6,284,195, which is approximately, like I said earlier, a 5% increase over 2022's number. Interest earnings are currently increasing and are estimated to generate more revenue in 23. Currently, we are seeing a rate of 1.75% on our savings, which compares to interest that was earned in 2017 and 2018. State and local grants have been scarce since 2022 and are expected to continue to be rare. State shared revenues like foreign fire and casualty are anticipated to be somewhat in line with the past few years. Public safety revenue permits for building and commercial developments. 2023 is expected to be lower than 2022 due to the increase in costs of building. Recreation revenue is expected to remain consistent, and miscellaneous income is budgeted conservatively because income from insurance claims and fluctuate yearly and are hard to predict. Overall salaries and wages budgeted to increase 8.7% per the COLA for the administration, 2.75% per negotiations for the public works, and 2.75% per the police bargaining agreements. 1.1% longevity is also included for the police, as well as approximately 5% for officers that are raising in the ranks. Included in both Public Works and the Police Department are new hires to replace anticipated retirees in 2023. Both departments are anticipating 2 retirees. Personnel costs in the Executive Administration Department have been reduced in '23 to reflect the elimination of 2 assistant positions that were created in the transition of both the Chief Administrator and the Director of Finance. Property, casualty, and auto insurance is estimated to increase 10% due to asset appraisals increasing 20%. Overall utilities are budgeted to increase 7.5% from the 2022 year-end projections. Overall utilities experienced a 46% increase in '21, mainly due to the natural gas and electricity costs that I was discussing earlier. Vehicle gasoline costs, as also discussed earlier, were at a 33% increase as of August. And as of next year, I have budgeted in approximately a 16% increase, which amounts to about 33 cents per gallon from the 2022 end-of-year estimates. Fire and medic costs are predicted are anticipated to be somewhat consistent with prior years, and they are directly reflective of the foreign fire and casualty insurance that we receive in the revenue side. Costs in the community development increased due to the addition of a contracted director of community development position being added in 2023. Excuse me. Public work experienced the most effects of the inflation throughout various expenses lines. 2023 increases include for snow removal, salt, gasoline. Increased funding for routine supplies were needed to keep up the maintenance throughout the municipality. Increased costs in the recreation department is to allocate enough funding to support the part-time summer recreation staffing. And increased utility costs account for the bulk increase in the parks department. In addition, the cost of the custodial services throughout the park were reallocated to better reflect the park maintenance costs in 2023. The 2023 MMO was based off the 2021 evaluations, and the police pension costs increased $52,341, and the non-uniform plan decreased $123,137. That is the overview for the general fund. If you would turn to page 37, I can go over some highlights for the capital. Capital projects, for the 2023 year total $3,832,500, and they include all of the projects that were outlined in the 2023 CIP. Also included newly were a couple things that needed to be added. There were 3 specifically: a traffic processor that is expected to, a traffic processor is expecting to be replaced next year. We had one go bad this year, and it was purchased about the same time, and they're anticipating it to need replaced next year. So we put that in the budget to be able to support that. Route 22 line painting, we had to push that over to the capital plan due to the cost increase of paint. This year's line painting wasn't able to support both the municipal roads and the Route 22 line painting that was needed. Because of such, we moved the line painting for the we moved the Route 22 line painting to 2023 due to it costing approximately $70,000, and it had a 5-year lifespan, which follows suit with the outlined capital project requirements. And also the third thing that was added was the police department server needed to be upgraded due to the replacement of the police camera vehicles. The police vehicle cameras. So that was added to, so we could be able to support the server that's needed for the upgrades. Facility maintenance repairs are encompassing the administration and library building sidewalk replacement due to failing sidewalk parts. And vehicle and equipment replacements are scheduled for police and public works and various improvements to the facility and parks. $800,000 will come from the state through liquid fuels allocation for the road projects. This is a decrease of $50,000 from 2022. Real estate transfer tax will assist with the road projects. There is a DCNR grant in the amount of $623,000 that will be used for the construction of the amphitheater, and local donations are being held by the Recreation Foundation will also go to support the amphitheater in the amount of $45,000. Moving on to page 56, Special Purpose Fund. In 2021, the Special Purpose Fund was established to account for payments made to the community library, the 3 fire departments, and Medic One. Dedicated real estate millage is the main revenue source for all 3. Each entity activity is tracked separately in individual bank accounts. Emergency equipment fund accounts will record in the revenues and expenses related to the repairs, maintenance, gasoline and insurance costs incurred for the fire trucks owned by the municipality. $100,000 will be available annually from the general fund for these maintenance costs. In addition, any purchases of new fire trucks will be tracked in this fund. The funding for these purchases will come directly from real estate millage. They are allocated 1.35 mils, which will be approximately $454,950 in 2023. The firemen will be required to keep these new purchases within the amounts of cash that are available to them. Medic One tracks the real estate revenues generated at a level of 0.2 mils. In the past, the general fund remitted $63,000 to Medic One to be used for vehicle purchases. Dedicated millage of 0.2 will generate roughly about $67,400. Once received, these funds will be remitted over to Medic One on an annual basis. And the community library will receive 1 mil of real estate taxes. The library fund will receive approximately $337,000 as the 1 mil in 2023, and the revenue source will be forwarded to the library on a monthly basis once the tax revenues are received. The general fund will not provide additional funding, and it is imperative that the library budgets accordingly because there's no guarantee that 100% of these estimated tax will be received, and real estate taxes are not collected during each of the 12 months. The hydrant fund records revenue from houses located within 600 feet of a fire hydrant and is used to pay the quarterly fees. Currently, there are 657 fire hydrants in the municipality, and the municipality pays for 650 of them. Next, I have a couple notes on the state fund. Page 47, the state fund tracks the annual allocation of the state for liquid fuels and the dedicated millage for the road improvement. Both are used for the road improvements such as overlay. The Concert in the Park Fund, which is on page 49, tracks the revenues and expenses related to the concert usually held in August at MCP. And the debt service fund on page 51 has dedicated mills set at 1.3 to meet future bond payments. Annual payment is about $417,113. It is a 15-year loan, and the final payment will be made in 2031 unless it's refinanced sooner. $3,279,687 is the principal outstanding balance as of 11/30/2022. That pretty much is the overview of all the changes and things taking place throughout all the different funds. I am able to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Questions from council?
I know it was a lot to take in at once.
That was very thorough, thank you. That was really good. And as always, I mean, this is just a beautiful document, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. A lot of planning went into it.
Absolutely. Any specific questions at this time?
Not here.
And we will close this public hearing, and we will get into our regular meeting this evening.
All right, thank you, council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Much,
Can I
Jason.
please have a roll call?
Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Dr. Lee Corns,
Here.
Mrs. Ling, Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Mr. Lemak,
Here.
Mr. Spadaro,
Here.
Mayor Sinet.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Nestico, do we have any unlisted amendments this evening?
None this evening.
Thank you. That brings us to our consent calendar items, just the minutes. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? Could I have a motion, please?
Motion to accept the minutes from the last council meeting?
Second.
So, Carl and Jamie Lang. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to comments by the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Dice. Do we have the slides? Oh, we're already up there. Okay, curbside leaf collection program. Public Services, the municipality of Murraysville's trash recycling hauler will conduct municipal-wide sweeps to collect leaves and yard waste. There's a 20-bag limit for each collection date. The deadline to sign up for the date is the Thursday before the pickup date. The next pickup date is Saturday, November the 12th, so you better get signing up there. And you just go online, listed below, and fill in the curbside leaf collection program to get it done, which is online. Next slide, please. If you didn't know Darren Miller, you met him this evening, but he's going to do a presentation on Tuesday, November 15th at 6:30 p.m. He's a Franklin graduate. Darren became the first athlete to complete the Ocean's 7 marathon swims across 5 continents on first attempts to benefit the Children's Hospital Foundation. He is exciting to share these life-changing experiences and his mindset around achieving the impossible. Join us for a wonderful evening of adventure. They will be collecting donations for the nonprofit SLAM to assist with preparing the handicap access to fishing along Sloan Creek. Again, Tuesday, November 15th at 6:30 p.m., and that concludes my announcement.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Brings us to comments by the Chief Administrator.
No comments for this month, Mr. President.
Thank you. Brings us to community input. Can we see if anybody's signed up? We actually have people here. For the good of the order, would anybody like to give community input? You can just keep it. Okay, thank you.
That's it?
Yep, that brings us to liaison comments and committee reports. Let's start on this end. Jason?
Sure. The library, we met last week, and the numbers are all looking good. They're almost to pre-COVID times. So that's a positive sign. The only other thing to mention is they've received a lot of positive feedback and positivity from the Teen Advisory Board that was created to try and get the teenage years more involved in library programs. So they report great success on that. And again, they had the programs are all listed on the website. If there's a few this week, if you'd like to go to the Murraysville website to see what's going on and sign up, they're all there.
Awesome, thank you. Carl?
Planning Commission meets next Tuesday.
Okay. Tony?
Okay. Medical One had a meeting this past week. They had 1,325 trips, 181 for Washington Township, and 242 wheelchairs. They sent 14 people to help out in the floods in Florida, and they're waiting for the results of that trip. Plus, they're waiting to see how much FEMA is going to send them for all their trouble. They got 2 new trucks in use right now that got state approval. They not only have to get the inspections, but the state has to come out and approve all the equipment in the truck and out of the truck and so on, mirrors and stuff like that. They're waiting for a new truck again now. Subscription is still trickling in, but it's still around 31% of the population. And they also have problems with the speeding and traffic on the highway. And a lot of people still don't pull over for the ambulance when they're coming down the highway. Instead of pulling over, they're speeding up with them so they can keep up with the truck. So that's basically it. That's it.
All right, thanks, Tony. Jamie?
Pension meets November 10th at 0900.
Okay. Jamie?
School board meets the 14th for a joint board plus committee of the whole. 16th is finance, got moved to the 16th, and curriculum is the 7th.
All right, thank you. Matt?
Parks and Recreation, we meet next Tuesday, so no real update from my last update, except for huge thank you to the Parks and Rec staff, Carly and her team, for the trick or treat on the trail. It was a huge success this past Saturday. They had 550 kids. God's blessed us with gorgeous weather, so I was there. It was I went and saw it, and it was just a fantastic event. They had, I think, 40-some vendors that were along the trail, as well as the families that brought their kids out. So huge success, a lot of work. Thank you so much to them for doing it. Not really a parks thing, but a couple with it. They're doing the last flags up on 22 are going to be this week. Coming up for Election Day. We're going to put them up Tuesday, and they're coming down Saturday, so they'll stay up during Veterans Day. So anyone that would like to volunteer, reach out to Bob McKenna. You can get his info at the municipal building anytime.
Awesome.
That's it.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Yep.
FTMSA had their meeting last month. They continue with repairs to the system. They continue to camera lines, repair any defects they find. Interestingly, that the COA in regards to smoke and dye testing, it's been a big deal here in Murraysville, that has to be done by August 2023. So they're fast approaching that. They're way ahead of schedule. It's just interesting it's going to be done soon. They had a discussion about whether the plant should be anaerobic or aerobic. Pretty robust discussion, just kind of shows how professional they are. They're always looking to make it better, always looking to have it be more efficient. They filed some declaration of takings for some lines they have to build, which is eminent domain. And I would note that because of Thanksgiving, their meeting this month is going to be November 10th at 6 p.m. at the plant. And with that being said, we will move on to our workshop items. So firstly, we have 9A, a discussion concerning amendments to the 2022 operating budget. We obviously just talked about this. Anything new anyone thought of? Okay, we will then move on to the discussion of the 2023 operating budget. Questions, concerns, anything to do with that?
Nope.
Okay. Now I think we're going to have some discussion on 9C, the amphitheater. So to start off with, Mike, does staff have anything they'd like to say to get us going here?
I don't think so. I can maybe kick things off. If there are questions, we can certainly turn to staff.
Okay.
So if I may, after last council meeting, council had suggested maybe considering a survey of the community to gauge interest in continuing with the amphitheater project. As we went back to the drawing board and tried to begin maybe piecing that together, I found it a little bit difficult to put together. So I wanted to bring that to council's attention and maybe provide some thoughts or feedback and maybe offer a recommendation. As I went back to the drawing board, the difficulty was trying to put together a survey that would be fair to the community itself. We have a project that's already underway, almost 20% complete. It has a partial amount of funding committed toward it, both from grant funding as well as donations. So putting together a survey could go a number of ways, but ranking that project versus other ideas or goals in the community wouldn't necessarily be fair, being that one project, like I said, has already commenced. And also gauging, I guess, the interest of pursuing the project comes with a few hurdles, trying to frame those questions and how to put that out to the community without having some sort of bias, coming up in the survey. So overall, found some difficulty in doing that. So again, going to the drawing board, talking with staff, trying to weigh it out, we had a few thoughts. So again, I think it's important to address some of the overall concerns that were expressed by the residents at the last meeting. We got some letters from concerned citizens. They were concerned mostly, it seemed like, about the cost increase, and that makes sense. The project started out somewhere in the range of $800,000, maybe less. Ultimately now looking at a $1.8 million price tag. That's rather substantial. But again, framing that for the community at large, I think some of the folks that were expressing concern maybe didn't have a full understanding of where those dollars changed around. When the project was initially conceived, it didn't include some aspects such as the parking, food truck staging area, restrooms, things like that. So the price tag certainly did go up. There's no doubt about that. We just heard a presentation regarding the amendment to the budget and the next year's budget. Inflation and other factors have definitely caused cost increases, supply chain issues, and other factors. So the cost has gone up, but again, to the community, I think looking at a jump from $800,000 to $1.8 million is rather substantial, and I don't think that paints the full picture for some of the folks that may have some concerns. So that was a big factor, and I think that we want to make that message clear to the community, anybody that might be tuning into the meeting this evening. After talking it through with staff and trying to weigh out how to proceed, the one thought that kind of came about was maybe considering having the Recreation Board examine this overall topic. They're pretty well versed. They're and responsible for making recommendations to council regarding parks and recreation. The amphitheater was recommended through a park study. I think they would be well equipped to be able to handle an analysis of the overall project. A lot of those folks have been on the board for some time, so they're familiar with the project from the beginning until now. As you know, this has come before council a great deal, much before my time, for a number of different things. Not only the idea of the project, but also different aspects of it, what the amphitheater would look like, restrooms, et cetera. So they're pretty familiar with all the details of the project. I think that may be a good starting point for council. If you want to have further feedback, maybe we kick it over to the Recreation Board, have them assess everything, and then provide a recommendation back to council. Again, I think that would be an ideal approach to it because it's still allowing us to examine the topic. We're kind of turning to the folks that are familiar with how things have transpired over the last several years and also have familiarity with the park plans, the previous surveys that were completed and things like that. In the alternative, the only other solution that I could see coming from the chief administrator's standpoint is potentially a vote to maybe table the project overall. I would say that would cause some concern, because I do think that it's a viable project. I do think it has a good value to the community. But from a staffing standpoint, there's a lot of reluctancy, and it has some departments, some staff in a little bit of a tizzy because they're just not sure if the project is going to ensue. So they're 20% of the way through. Public Works has been conducting work over at the park, but they weren't really sure what to do. So following the last meeting, there were some concerns there about whether to pursue things, whether to keep on moving forward, even though that was the directive of council at that time. But it was a bit of a mixed message. So I think, not to mention, we still have folks, staff looking to continue to bring in funding for the project. There are donations committed to it. We're trying to garner additional donations. So all of that said, if there is a desire to maybe table the project overall, it may be best to kind of just pull the Band-Aid off, and I guess maybe it would be a vote of council to do that. And again, that wouldn't be my recommendation, but I do think it would send a clear message to staff as to where the project is, where it currently stands. So I don't know if either of those two options sound desirable to council, but we do have a project that was previously approved. I'm kind of caught in the middle here with only 4 months of experience trying to learn the details of it, the background of it, and then also try to make a recommendation to council. Easiest. So I think that's why you see myself coming back to council every couple weeks with a little bit more information and not a whole heck of a lot more substance to offer. So we're kind of caught in the middle ground. So those are the different thoughts we've had. I would say that my recommendation would be maybe asking the Recreation Board to maybe conduct a review of the project and then provide a recommendation back to council as to their thoughts. But I leave it open to council. But that's kind of where I've gotten in the last 2 weeks since we last spoke at the prior council meeting.
I could say for one thing, I would not table the project. I think that we're progressing, if you will, we have progressed, and not to not take into account concerns of some of the citizenry, but one thing I'm thinking is that oftentimes in a situation like this where there's an objection to something that is ongoing, you have like perhaps a petition, okay, that says, look, here's a list of 70 people, 60, 40, 100, whatever. And I don't think we've seen that. I think we've heard word of mouth, and we've had a letter, or a letter or two, I should say, but I guess what I'd say is that it just, I don't know that there's a resistance to it. Of course, the resistance is founded on cost, but the fact is it's not total cost. There's grants, there's donations, and so forth. So
I agree with Carl too. The feedback that I hear and get in the community, the excitement for it and the want for it far outweighs anything that is on the negative side of that. I think we've done a great job bringing a lot of the stuff in-house to take some of that cost and be able to control some of that cost on that. And I know our Public Works has worked, so hard doing that, and they've done a fantastic job doing that. I agree with you, Michael. Like when you look at that number, it's obviously a big number and it's a big change. But I think when you dig into why that is, a lot of it is what you said. Originally, when that project was originally planned and looked at, I mean, it was non-inclusive of, the handicapped accessible bathrooms being up to code and the parking lots and things like that. I think a lot of that, it was more just putting an amphitheater and clearing out that hillside. I think once it was looked at with, what it's going to cost to get water and gas and electric and things in there, and we looked at it, a lot of the cost is by inflation and supply chain things, but I think a lot of it is what this project would cost when it's totally complete at the end. So I think you have to kind of look at it like that rather than just, the project in size or cost. And I agree with Carl. I mean, I'm seeing far more excitement and want for it than I am, the people that are against doing it. So
I have a
Michael,
completely differing.
excuse me 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. Of course.
A lot of the issues you mentioned, we already discussed them, I think, a lot of them, and we already approved them. So a lot of the things you're saying, we did it before, and we all approved it. The other thing is, The opposition we're getting now is based on 3 emails out of 22,000 people. Nobody said anything before this, and we get 3 emails, and we want to change everything. It's not the majority of the people, which I think the majority of people in Murraysville do want the amphitheater. And I look back on it, 3 emails, and we're changing everything. And we want to do this, we want to do that. I think we go ahead with it, vote on it. Maybe we vote on it tonight. Let's finish this issue. Because see who wants it and see who doesn't want it.
I have a differing opinion from the 3 gentlemen here. I think families are seeing huge increases because of inflation, you know, in their housing and just their consumer costs. And I think when we go and we increase taxes through the EIT, and then we take the money and we build, I think during inflation and the recession that's going to be following, we should not be in a period of building, we should be in a period of maintenance, like we're going to be doing with Kowalczyk Park. To me, that's something that we already have. We maintain it, we refurbish it, but we're not building something new that needs more maintenance. We need to rein in our expenses, and to me, it doesn't matter how much work has already gone into that, because it's not necessarily a no for never, it's just a no for now. So, I mean, one path you could look at it is, okay, we just go ahead through with it, we already have money invested, and maybe it'll be a cost savings because maybe inflation will keep increasing and it'll keep, you know, product and building costs low. The other alternative path is to wait for an economic recovery to come, where cost of goods goes back down. You know, when hopefully the Keystone Pipeline is reopened and oil prices go down, all these things, you know, we'll see the benefits from all these things. So for me, I don't think we should go forward with it. I think it's something that we should look into what we have already and maintain it. Because we don't want to not maintain the things, and I believe we have several parks that need upgrades, and I think we should go and do those.
I think, though, it's a very unfair characterization to put that the EIT was increased to spend it on this. That one has nothing to do with the other.
I didn't say it was increased to spend on this. I'm saying if you're going to increase your taxes and you're going to, it doesn't really matter where it gets distributed. I mean, you increase taxes on individuals that are living in the community. You shouldn't just go and be spending wherever it is. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going all toward the amphitheater, but you know, the budget just had to be kind of revamped and everything, and we're not doing, you know, some projects, we're tabling those. So to me, seem more of a necessity than something that's an amenity. So we should be taking care of the necessities and maintaining things in this community rather than building new amenities that will cost more money to maintain.
I certainly understand that. I don't want to debate that. It makes total sense. I think the only maybe difficulty, and it's fair to contrast, you heard talk about some of the painting and having to delay that because of cost, things like that. And I agree, that makes sense. The only distinction I would say is that this has a pending grant associated with it. So if we put it off and delay, then you lose that grant and the almost $700,000 toward the project. So I think that would be the only distinction I would draw there, just to kind of point that out again, kind of being transparent about everything. There are some things that we did put off, no doubt because of the cost increases or just the way that the money has to be shuffled around. But we tabled the project. I think the fear may be losing out on that grant, and then that's a 1/3 of the overall project cost. So.
And what was our matching for that grant? Was it 100% or 50% matching?
I believe it was 100%. I could be wrong. 50%.
It's usually 50.
But it's still our cost will be more than that.
It's going to be personal donations for this part.
I just want to make something, like, just put it out there. The overall cost of the project, yes, it's a 50% match, but a lot of those costs are in-kind services. So our own equipment that's getting used, our employees, like, going and working. we are able to have that as an in-kind. So if there's certain hours that are attributed to that work, we allot for that in the finances. So when you look at a project, and I think it was 1.6 million, a lot of that is in kind, a lot of that is the match. So you look at that big number, but when you piece it down, it does get a lot lower. I mean, 600,000, you're left with a million, but the in-kind match behind it. And if you would like me to work those numbers and get those, we have them all written down. We can show you guys so you have more of a transparent of what out of actual pocket costs that we have to do versus what the total project cost is. Because those are two things that if you're leaving out little pieces of the puzzle, it makes it this much more like exorbitant. And I do understand all the issues that you're bringing to the table, but I did want to bring up that there is an in-kind match.
Right, I think it's $219,348. And then our, it says 2023 funding grant match was $623,000. So that's still $842,000. It doesn't matter if it's an in-kind service or capital reserve or wherever it's coming from, it's still the taxpayers' dollars.
No, I completely understand. I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to
I
bring
will
up
mention one thing. The Parks and Recreation is looking now onto how best create, if you will, a matrix or sensibility in naming rights for whatever. Okay, in this case, the amphitheater is a major project which it's highly likely that there will be some funding coming in for naming rights. To what amount, I don't know. But I think that's something that should be considered as well.
Plus also, they're out there soliciting donations from businesses, private citizens that are doing that. So a lot of those are coming in and have come in already, for that project that's going to
I think
bring down some of
a
that.
bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I think before you're able to make a decision about how much money we're spending, if there's going to be donations, they should already be received and done. I mean, that's a huge amount of money.
So I'm afraid I'm kind of in the middle of everybody right now. I feel like, no, not at all. At our last meeting, we're all very concerned about our economy, our local economy. I know none of us took the decision lightly to raise taxes when we did, and we do have a lot of seniors on fixed incomes. At the end of the last meeting when we talked about this, we talked about maybe surveying the community, getting a sense of people's opinions now since things have changed since 2018, and building costs are up, almost 36% since 2019. I also understand that that's maybe not a valid path right now and appreciate staff continuing to look into this. I think we all agree that an amphitheater would be a tremendous asset to this community, could bring phenomenal opportunities. And part of why I think we said we wanted to survey across the winter was because we said, well, there's not a whole lot more work that's going to happen this winter. We're not going to do a whole lot till the spring. I don't think we need to wait that long, and certainly staff does need direction. They need to have a sense of if they're going to keep working hard to find grants and to fundraise. I like the recommendation this evening that we ask Parks and Rec to take a look. When do they meet next?
Tuesday.
Why don't they meet Tuesday? Just with their experience, we have carefully and cautiously appointed them. They're meeting before we have another meeting. There is no rush, in my opinion, to vote yes or vote no, because we've already voted on this project. Unless we're going to say we're going to kill it, or we're not going to kill it, I don't think it hurts to wait one more meeting because we're not holding up any construction if we wait one more meeting to discuss this. I would personally like the recommendation of the Parks and Rec Board, and I think it also shows all of the community members to whom we're responsible that yes, we are continuing to be fiscally conscious. We don't want to cost an enormous amount. I mean, Parks and Rec might come back with, actually, we think it's going to go up another 40%. I think they will. But I'd like to hear what they have to say. Yeah, I'd like an opportunity for the community to know and maybe have public comment at the next meeting so that we can say, hey, we've done that a lot, but maybe there's something else we can do to make sure that the community knows that their voice is heard so that it's not just sitting up here and debating how many emails we did or didn't get and what the community does or doesn't want now. I know we all talk to people in the community. We all really care. But I think it would not hurt to wait one more meeting to get the recommendation from the board of professionals that we put our faith into. And I'd like the community
I agree with Jamie. Well, Jamie Lee.
Sorry.
Dr. Coynes.
I did get married,
I'm sorry, Dr. Lee.
Michael, one question I have though, right now, what exactly are we, if we didn't move forward, what are we holding up by not moving forward right now? Anything?
You mean from a construction standpoint?
Yeah, construction, is because you had said there's, are they up there working? What are they doing? Is it something where there's some, something they need to do right now because winter's fast approaching? Or is it really, if we just wait, it's not that big of a deal to essentially say, hey, whatever little things you're doing up there, that's fine. We just want to have Parks and Rec say what they have to say. And then, we can open it back up at the next meeting, and maybe at the next meeting, we can just have it as an action item at that point where we're going to make a decision.
Yeah, that's a great question. Over the last 2 weeks, I think they did finalize some of the sewer line work there. And I believe the last report I got back from our Public Works Director was that they were going to wrap up work there for the winter, and they would begin back in February or March. So we do have a little bit of time. I think that was even mentioned at the last meeting, but they were still doing the sewer line at that time, and they were doing a water line as well.
And those were things we wanted anyways. Amphitheater or no amphitheater, I hope we get an amphitheater at some point that's a good cost and maybe simulate. We wanted sewage up there anyways. We wanted to run that. We wanted more restroom options for whatever's there. So either way, I think that the most imminent next construction, not that we're going to wait till February to make a decision certainly, but it's not anything that's critical to this amphitheater.
I agree with Jamie. I think
Looking for snow.
And so to add to that and answer your question, Dane, I think it may even be a situation where we could allow the rec board to kind of digest things or be presented to them at their next meeting. I'm sure that Mac or myself could certainly assist with presenting it to them for their consideration, allowing them an opportunity to weigh things out. They could even, discuss it at their December meeting and then maybe provide a response back to council so that sometime in January we get that feedback, and then we'll at that time have their recommendation, whatever that may be, and then we can make a decision there at the beginning of the next year as to what we want to do, and that would coincide with the timelines of the project for construction and picking things back up. So I think it would all fit together that way. You're also not putting a strain on the rec board who has no idea that it's coming their way to then have to debate the topic in a few days from now. That'll give them some time over the next month to gather feedback, whatever they may need to do, put a feeler out in the community or, again, discuss it amongst themselves. So it will give them a little bit of time. We certainly have time, as you had mentioned, because we did wrap up the sewer line just within the past week here. So that may be the best alternative to get a response back to council, but a well-reasoned one from the rec board.
Is that going to provide clear enough comfort direction for staff? Because I know that we were still trying to look into some other grants approved for that grant. Is it a community block grant or something? That I think we just applied for it last time. I'm seeing nods and shakes, so help me out.
That's right. Yes, that was for the ADA accessible restroom.
Okay.
So we did apply for that. We won't know the results of that until sometime in early next year.
$180,050 we were looking at?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
What about, when might we have any kind of word, and I really haven't followed some of the casino funding grants, et cetera, available. When might we find out or be able to reach out for that? Because if there's an opportunity, I guess where I'm going with this is, I don't know if we are or are not going to build the amphitheater. I think we all want a little more information. We want to show the community. But with the assumption that we might, I'd like staff to continue to look for any possible, shake the trees like you do, like you always do, to find any other grant sources, casino funding. Again, I don't know if that's an option right now, but I don't want to task staff with something if you feel like it's not worth your time because you don't have clear enough direction.
No, I think, and staff has continued to do that throughout, and I don't think that will stop. I think, again, my suggestion earlier about maybe tabling the project just was to try to provide something conclusive to staff. But again, if we know that this is being considered and being weighed out by whether it be the rec board or any other entity, council themselves, and the directive is still to continue pursuing things, funding sources, et cetera, then we'll do that. So that won't be a problem. They've continued to do it since the inception of the project, and we wouldn't stop now at this juncture. I just wanted to provide some clarity for our staff, and I think maybe we have that now. We have a little bit more direction with this.
So what are we doing? We're going to continue on with small items, and then in January decide if we're going to go ahead?
Again, it's entirely up to council, but I would say, based on everything I've heard here, I would recommend that we pass this over to the rec board for review and a recommendation back to council. We set a date of maybe early January. That gives them 2 meetings to kind of process everything and weigh it out, and they could get back to us maybe by our our second meeting in January. We wouldn't, we could do it for the reorganization. That's pretty early into the year. So maybe we set a deadline by that second January meeting of council, and at that point we would have a recommendation from their board as to what they've gathered, and then from there we could take the next steps. But we have no physical work going on at the park that we would have to postpone or continue or anything like that. Everything's on hold right now for the winter, so we don't have to worry about that. And again, we'll always continue to look for funding for this and other projects regardless. So I would say that would be the recommendation, is to pass it off and get a recommendation from them.
Somebody asked me about the location today, so I could explain it to them. It's off of Worcester Road, am I right? Worcestertown Road,
Yes.
across from the dog park,
Yes.
up on the hill, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's really it's really dug up out there. There's a lot of work to do out there right now. I mean, it's
Well, my understanding is we're telling staff the work that you're doing for the sewers and all that, you continue to do that. And if I'm hearing Michael correctly, what he's saying is this big project work isn't going to start until the spring anyway. So we're not necessarily harming anything. So let me ask this, does anyone on council object to the plan of the rec board analyzing this? It comes back before council sometime around the second meeting in January, and then at that meeting in January, that's it. That's the dispositive motion. I mean, I don't want to kick this around for another year. So any objections to that? Okay.
I object to.
Okay.
I do.
Yep.
It's something that's going to go ahead anyhow. I mean, we drag on everything sometimes just because somebody finds a little problem. This has been how long going now? How long has this been? When was this started, Jim? 2 years. And we're trying to decide if we want it now? It doesn't make sense. We wanted it 2 years ago. Now we don't want it because of 3 emails and a couple people that don't like it.
I'm not sure, Tony, who has said that they don't want it necessarily. It would be a tremendous asset. What I'm saying is we literally cannot do any work on the amphitheater until February. I asked for a 1 meeting wait because we do have some concerned residents, because we did just raise taxes for the first time in 14 years. I don't know, I never get that number right, even though I know it every time. Building costs are up almost 40%. They may continue. I see zero harm in saying, let's get an update just for a little extra validation from the board of professionals that we've appointed. I don't think it hurts anything. I think it's a slap in the face to the community to say, well, there's some concerns, too bad. We're confident this is what's going to happen.
I don't think it's a slap in the face waiting 2 years to decide on this.
You know, lots
But I
happen in
think
2
it's
years.
fair to go to Parks and Recreation and allow them to take a look at it. I don't necessarily think we need till the middle of January. Like, I think we could,
I don't either.
by the end of the year, come up with a decision
Oh,
for
and
it,
that's very true. If Parks
couple
and Rec
meetings.
feels comfortable getting to us sooner, let's do it sooner.
Right.
You know, that's
Yeah.
just.
I mean, I think we see what they say. If they say, hey, we want to look at this or look at that, and they need more time, fine. But if not, if they're able to look at it, I think by the end of the year, which is-
Likewise, Mac.
End of the year is only 2 meetings or so anyway, and this one's.
Likewise, if they have any resources or things that you want to share sooner with us, I think that's excellent. I also don't see the need to wait until January.
Sure.
I don't see it a harm in 1 meeting to just.
No, absolutely. I
We
think
weren't
it's a
in a
good idea to
pandemic
go.
when we voted for this.
I mean, that's kind of why you assign those people to that board, is they're people that, understand that and have been involved in a lot of it and know what's going on with it. So, I think it's a great idea to go to them and get a recommendation from them. And I agree. If they say they need longer, fine. But if they're able to come back sooner than that, then I think we can, make a decision then.
Okay.
Yep, I still object. Go ahead.
Okay. I will say too, Tony, that, it's not just the emails we got, because actually everyone I've talked to has been in favor of it personally, but we have some council members who were elected who do have these concerns, so I'm saying we're just going to push it back a little bit, but We're not going to kick this around for another year. We're going to figure this out at the latest by January. Then that'll be it.
I'll be surprised if it does go
Hold me
in
to it.
January. I've seen things in council wait 7 years to get it passed.
Not when I was president. Okay. So I think we at least have a game plan that everybody can live with. We all agree?
Yeah, I think it's a good plan.
Okay. That is it for our workshop items. That brings us to our action items. So 13A, can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to consider authorizing staff to file a Department of Conservation and Natural Resources application with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to complete park rehabilitation and development at the site of the Kovalchik Park in the amount of $147,578.08 and commit a matching share of funds in the amount of $73,789.04.
Second.
Thank you, Carl and Jamie. Michael?
Yes, so as you can see, this is a grant application that we would like to submit to DCNR. The total project cost is estimated to be around $150,000. The 50% share of almost $75,000 would be comprised mostly of in-kind services, so to the tune of roughly $67,000. So the small amount of physical funds going towards the project, I think, are available in the Capital Reserve Fund as part of the park rehab. So we have that amount of funding allocated. And this project overall would rehab the basketball and tennis court area, replacing the fence that's there. If anybody's been to the park recently, there is some damage to the fence from trees that have fallen recently. This would overlay the court and allow us to install pickleball courts, something that the community's been asking for quite a while now, or I shouldn't say a while, but quite recently. We've gotten a lot of requests for something like this. I think that this would be a good opportunity to bring something like that into the community. It's a good park for that sort of activity. There's enough parking there to facilitate it. And there's a grant opportunity available here. So we'd like to see if we can get some funding to contribute to the project, and I think it would be a worthwhile improvement to this park.
Pretty great. Questions or concerns from council?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to 13B. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 764-22, the proposed amendments to the 2022 operating budget.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. Obviously, we've already talked about this a couple of times. Any final questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Do we have any old business this evening? Any new business from anybody?
I don't know if mine falls into old or new business, but want to remind everybody that a couple months ago we talked about the shift with our pension board, JC, with our pension board from Frank to ANCO / with ANCO. And at that time we had talked about asking staff to maybe start to look at what other communities around us or communities with similar kind of socioeconomic status, demographics, et cetera, who they might be working with, if they're pleased, displeased, et cetera. Because I have any grave concerns about ANCO, but as a council, we had said that we would like to start to look at that because we understand that ANCO may not be raising fees on us now, but I think they've made it clear that within a year or two, they would look to do that after that transition. And I don't know who else is out there. So I'd like staff to look into that if the rest of council is still interested in that, just sort of as we're getting closer to the end of this year.
Okay.
Any objections to just investigating?
Nope.
No?
Okay, yeah, please look into it, JC and Mike. Yeah.
Sorry, and everybody was getting ready to go.
No, it's executive session.
In the back.
She's turning off.
You can come back over to this one if you want.
Just to kind of follow up on that comment that you made, Michael and I were actually talking about this recently, and we have a list of places that we want to reach out to try to get some more information. So you know,
You
we've
do
been
have
trying.
a crystal ball.
Well, I remember it was brought up that it was a possibility, and as you said, they have said that they're going to hold prices, but we don't know how long that's going to last. And it is always just a good practice to go through. Things were a little bit crazy, and we've kind of haven't really been seeing the transition. We're still mostly dealing with the two individuals we always dealt with. So we haven't seen the full transition, but it is on our radar, and we have a list of potential people that we just want to kind of look at.
Thank you
So,
both.
You're welcome.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Now, we do have an executive session this evening, and I'm guessing there's going to be no action coming out of that?
No, there won't be.
Okay, we are going to have an executive session pertaining to personnel and property lease agreements. So I just need a motion to adjourn to executive session, please.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.